All right, guys, this will be the week 2 Intel video after watching the week 1 Intel video back last week. I had a few changes I wanted to make to the format. If you guys have any additional requests, please let me know. With that being said, we'll go ahead and get into the waiver pickups here. First guy I have here is Wan'Dale Robinson. We've kind of seen the floor and the ceiling from Wan'Dale so far. I think he'll be a viable fantasy flex for the rest of the season. I look Ayumanor. He's probably not there yet, but he's looked really solid through 2 weeks with Cam Ward. Again, hasn't had that high ceiling type game, but he's looked really smooth. Zach Ertz, tight end 3 right now. He needs to be on a roster and probably in a starting lineup. Even at his old age, he still looks really good and has good chemistry with Jaden Daniels. Then Najee Harris, he has actually done basically nothing so far in fantasy, but if you watched Amari Hampton the first 2 weeks, hasn't looked great. And if you watched Najee last night, he looked better than Amari Hampton. So I think he may end up winning that job, at least for this season. These are some other guys that I don't think are most likely to hit, but I think are probably worth deep stashes. Blake Corum, he looked better than Kyron Williams so far in the first 2 weeks. Nothing crazy there. Dobbs and Wicks. Jaden Reed got hurt, so I think if one more of these Packers receivers goes down, one of these two guys could be legitimately startable in fantasy lineups. And then Torrey Horton, this is like a super long shot, but he had a lot of buzz in training camp from local beat reporters, and also he had a solid week last week. So he may end up hitting down the line. First guy I want to look at as a trade-away target is Ja'Marr Chase. Right now he's currently the wide receiver 6 in fantasy. I have his projection at wide receiver 24 at 12.5 fantasy points. We take a look at this post from Nick Ercolano. He's one of the guys I follow for fantasy football content. This is basically a breakdown of Ja'Marr Chase with and without Joe Burrow. And as you can see on the left, in PPR, he averages right around 12 points a game. It's a pretty big drop-off, and I think right now, if you were to move Ja'Marr, you could probably get a receiver like Drake London. So I think there's a lot of value in moving Ja'Marr right now. You can take a gamble and hope that the Bengals trade for a Jameis Winston or Kirk Cousins that might be able to support a top 10 wide receiver finish for Ja'Marr Chase. But I think there's a lot of value if you move Ja'Marr Chase right now. The next guy I'm going to take a look at is Zay Flowers. He's currently the wide receiver 5 in fantasy right now, and I also have him projected as the wide receiver 24. There's a lot of guys that have the same averages. So, like, there's 4 guys listed as wide receiver 24 right now, but it's essentially just looking at where his average points per game falls in. As you can see, the last 2 seasons, right around that mark, and so far he's blown that out of the water. And there hasn't been much of a situation change from this year to last year, or even from his rookie year. Really, the only major change in the offense was Derrick Henry in 2024. But when you look at Zay Flowers this year, Mark Andrews has had 1 fantasy point in the first 2 games. Even if Mark Andrews isn't actually that good anymore, he's not going to average 1 fantasy point a game. He's going to get more work. And then also Isaiah Likely is coming back this week. He's questionable at least. If not, he'll be back in week 4. But I just don't see Zay returning the same numbers that he has so far the first 2 weeks this year. All right, the last guy I have here as a trade-away target is Saquon. At this point, I'm probably getting known as a Saquon Barkley hater, but I love Saquon as a fan. But as I went over in the post-draft power rankings video, I don't expect Saquon to be different than the rest of those running backs that hit that carry mark. And if you take a look at the right here, Saquon's averaging 4 less points per game, even though the Eagles are running the ball more. I know Saquon still gets a lot of his points from receiving work, but and so that's not the entire story, but it's just something to look at. And I just think there's still opportunity to trade Saquon as an RB1, even though I think he will finish as an RB2. The first trade for candidate I have is Ricky Pearsall. I think we saw this past week that Mac Jones is capable of leading a solid offense for the 49ers, and I think Ricky Pearsall is due to continue to grow with the team. As you can see in the bottom right, he still hasn't played too many games in his career, but in the 2 games this season, he has performed better than he did last year. It's not going to be a league-winning type player, but I think there is definitely value there if you're looking for a wide receiver too. Next trade for candidate I have is TJ Hockenson. This is probably the guy that I feel most confident in trading for. He's currently the tight end 41, and I'm projecting him to finish as a top 10 tight end. In his 4 seasons where he's been healthy and had good quarterback play, he's averaged 11 points per game or more. Last year, he's obviously came back from his injury. And so far this year, J.J. McCarthy has not played well. And I think that's going to improve. I don't think he's going to finish as a league-winning tight end, but I think he is a player that should be in the starting lineup. And with him having Tucker Kraft, I think TJ Hockenson is definitely available for trade. The last trade for candidate I have here is Jacory Croskey-Merritt. He's currently the running back 35, and I'm projecting him to finish as an RB2, probably low-end RB2. The bottom right snippet, that's just James Robinson. It's just to show that 2020 season is James Robinson getting basically the entire backfield to himself. And if they were to do that, I think Jacory Croskey-Merritt could return similar numbers if given that same opportunity. In 2021, James Robinson had some work taken by Carlos Hyde, and that's just another, I think, realistic number that Jacory Croskey-Merritt could hit if some of the other Washington running backs get a decent amount of snaps. But yeah, that's all I really wanted to cover in this video. Tomorrow, the Week 2 recap will come out. So that's it. Thank you, guys.